Welcome to tonight's Committee of Adjustment meeting. This is a meeting to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act of Ontario. The role of the committee is to review the proposals that are before it, consider the evidence provided, and make a decision based on the four tests established by the Planning Act. In order to conduct an efficient hearing, we have adopted the following process. Tonight's meeting will be live streamed and available for future viewing on the town's live stream page, oakville.ca/live. People attending the committee meeting are to be courteous and respectful of the members of the committee, town staff, and others in attendance. We ask that all cellular devices be switched off at this time. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chair. All persons wishing to address the committee are required to provide their name and address. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided to all speakers. Any submissions beyond 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the chair. Any materials presented to the committee for viewing will remain the property of this committee. Persons seeking a deferral or withdrawal of an application will be invited to do so at the onset of the meeting. If a request for a deferral is granted, it's the responsibility of the applicant to contact the Secretary Treasurer regarding the scheduling of a new hearing date. At the request of the committee, the applicant may be asked to provide a brief presentation and answer any questions that may arise. If the applicant has any concerns with the recommendations and proposed conditions found within the staff report, this is your time to advise the committee. Any persons who wish to support or oppose the application will then be given an opportunity to speak to the committee. In the interest of efficiency, groups sharing the same view are asked to select a spokesperson, and individual speakers are asked not to cover the same points as those who have already spoken. The applicant will then be given an opportunity to respond to the comments made by any interested party and answer any additional questions from the committee. Discussion will then be closed and the matter will be taken into committee for a decision. Once the committee has made an oral decision, any person desiring a written copy must file with the Secretary Treasurer a written request for notice of the decision. A green sheet is provided on the table at the back of the room for this purpose, and only those filing such a request will be given any subsequent notice of any appeal. Notice of the committee's decision will be mailed to the applicant and anyone who filed a written request not later than 10 days following the decision for minor variances and 15 days for consents. If you do not agree with the committee's decision, you may appeal the decision to the local planning appeal tribunal. The last day to appeal will be noted on the decision. If no appeal is received within the prescribed time frame, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding. The applicant and anyone who received a copy of the decision will then be notified by written correspondence. Thank you. Let's see, tonight we have regrets from Ms. McHale and Mr. Hardcastle. Committee, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? I see none. At this time, we'd like to entertain any requests for deferral or withdrawal of applications. Yes, sir. Come forward, please. If we could get your name and address.
It's Jason Heater, Hicks Design Studio, 295 Robinson Street. Application, it's number 5 on the agenda, 1298 Devon Road, CAV 97, 2019.
And you're seeking a deferral?
Yeah, although we have a positive planning report and staff have recommended approval, we believe it's in the best interest of all to seek deferral for tonight's application in order to look at shifting the house forward to help alleviate some concerns for the neighboring property at 1304. We've reached out in a preliminary nature to town staff and believe there's an opportunity to shift the house forward, thus aligning it with the existing building faces on either side. It's a bit of an odd configuration for the existing house, so the setback puts us back a little bit farther. So we're looking to help that out, and it will result in an additional variance, a front yard variance, but we think it will achieve a better house location ultimately.
Okay, thank you. It's always good to see that you're responding to concerns that have been raised. The Secretary Treasurer has noted the earliest date you can come back would be September 24th.
That's right, yeah.
And there's a deferral fee.
And the deferral fee
Yeah.
will be payable.
Yeah, we're aware, thanks.
Committee members, any concern with the deferral? Okay, so your application is deferred.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else seeking a deferral or withdrawal? Okay. Then we'll proceed with the first matter tonight, CAV A093-2019 at 191 Juanita Drive. Good evening. We get your name and address, please.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Gus Ricci. I'm the architect and agent for the application at 191 Juanita Drive in Oakville. My address is 64 Rebecca Street, Oakville.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to this application tonight? Seeing none. Committee members, would you like a presentation? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry about that. You'd like to speak to the application? In support or objection?
Just question.
Okay, so then, Mr. Ricci, we could ask you to do a quick presentation?
Sure. The application before you this evening is for the construction of a two-story dwelling. It's located in a sort of a corner condition whereby we're demolishing an existing one-story bungalow with a detached garage at the rear of the property. The proposed two-story residence is fronting on to essentially the westerly portion of Juanita Drive, with the rear yard basically contained where the existing garage is to be demolished. The variances that we're seeking this evening are, there's two. One is for an increase in garage, which is very minor in nature. It's an increase from 45 to 45.5 square meters. The other increase is for a residential floor area. The permitted is 41%, and we're asking an increase to 43.06%. That represents an increase of about 137 square feet, essentially across 2 floors of the dwelling. The proposed dwelling meets all other zoning requirements. You'll notice that because it's a corner lot condition, the requirement is to provide a 3.5 meter flankage setback. We've provided that. We're at a minimum of 3.62, and it goes up to 4 at the front corner. We meet obviously the side yard setback, the front yard setback, and the rear. And more importantly, we're actually below the permitted coverage for the property. So given that it's a corner condition and the flankage requirement, we feel we've done a pretty good job in sort of fitting the design of the building into the context itself. The massing of the building has been designed in such a way that, let me just pull out a perspective for you. The massing of the building is designed so that most of the mass has been centered in the middle portion of the dwelling. You can see that in the floor plan. The building steps in on the sides closest to the neighbor to the south. And then there's a lot of insulation in the building facade just to break down the massing. And at the very corner, because it is a corner lot condition, we've actually wrapped the glass around and we push the second story wall back so that to reduce the impact on the corner as you drive around the corner of the street there. We believe it meets the 4 tests and is quite sympathetic to the neighborhood, understanding that there's development in the neighborhood where quite a few 2-story dwellings are being built. We've read the staff comments that it is in support of the application and agree with the conditions that are being asked for. Thank you.
Is Thank you, Mr. Ricci. The perspective is very helpful in understanding the massing. Committee members, any questions? Okay, if we just ask you to step back, we'll invite the neighbors to come up to the podium and speak if you desire at this time.
Just a couple of quick questions
Okay,
as to
sorry,
once-
if we get your name and address, please?
Rodney and Noreen Almeida from 202 Moneda Drive.
Thank you.
So we kind of face across the corner, so
Right.
I guess we face across the side. So I just wanted to check, is the entrance facing, sorry.
Sure.
So this is sort of a Google map of the area. So the proposed house is here,
Right,
and the front door would be facing
okay.
this
So I think
direction.
This is ours.
Right.
This one's ours. So-
Yeah.
Okay, so it's
So,
facing
so the view you would see is almost
this one.
that view there.
That view there, okay.
Yes.
And the other question I have is, once things proceed, what is the timeline? Like, when would construction start and end? Do we,
Anytime between December and March start, and 12 to 14 months after that.
after that? Okay. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ricci, anything to add following that, or?
No, I'm open to any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you, committee. Any questions? Seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion. Ms. Murray.
Mr. Chair, having conducted my site visit, reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that the staff is in support of. Having also taken into account the comments presented this evening, as well as questions and submissions from the neighbors, I am satisfied that the minor variance application meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application for variance subject to the following conditions: that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated July 10th, 2019, and elevation drawings dated June 14th, 2019, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction, and in cases where a building permit is not required, that the proposed scope of work has not been fully completed.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor to approve? That is unanimous. Your application is approved.
Thank you.
We'll now hear CAV A094, 1320 Avon Crescent.
Good evening.
evening.
My name is Peter Miasek. I'm the homeowner of 1320 Avon Crescent.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to the committee, has an interest other than the owner in this application? Okay. Seeing none, committee members, would you like a presentation? No? Then be happy to entertain a motion. Mr. Fleming.
Mr. Chair, having conducted my site visit and having reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written report, which I note that is in support of, and also noting that there were no written letters in objection to this application, I look to move a motion to support this application as applied for, finding that it's minor in nature and meets 4 tests of the Planning Act. I'd like to add the conditions that are noted in the staff's report. That the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevations, print date June 26, 2019, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction. And in cases where a building permit is not required, that the proposed scope and work has not been fully completed.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor of the motion to approve? That is unanimous, sir. Your application is approved.
Thank you very much. Good time.
Now call application CAV A095, 1098 Melvin Avenue. Mr. Kieran, it's
Good
been a while.
evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Joris Kieran. I'm with Kieran Design in Oakville, located at 11 Bronte Road, Unit 31, and I'm the agent for the applicant.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience with an interest in this application that'd like to speak to the committee tonight? Seeing none. Mr. Kieran, you've read the proposed conditions?
I do accept the proposed conditions. I do have one request for the committee tonight. We had a small typo that was discovered during the review with planning staff. It's on the site plan, and it's the label that was placed on the covered porch at the back actually said it was an uncovered porch, and obviously it's not an uncovered porch, it's a covered porch. So that was pointed out to us, and we have corrected that, and I would like to submit this evening the corrected site plan drawing.
Okay.
The same date? I'll have to go get it then.
I would like that to form part of the record for when we go to building permit.
So, Mr. Kieran, doesn't seem to be a date other than the plot date.
Let's see what Brandon's done here. So he's gonna have to, we're gonna have to have 2 dates,
Yep.
site plan with the August date. And then the elevations, I guess, is the July 8th date.
So correct date for the site plan is?
So I would suggest that if the committee is inclined to approve this, the recommended condition would be revised, that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated August 13th, 2019, and elevation drawings plot date of July 8th, 2019.
Yes.
Other question, Mr. Chair, for town staff. Covered, uncovered, does that change the maximum RFA in the calculations?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we confirmed with staff during discussions with the agent that it wouldn't change the calculation of the covered portion. It was assumed that it was going to be covered.
Thank you.
Okay, committee, any questions? Any requests for a presentation? Seeing none, may I have a motion, please, and taking into account the revision to the proposed conditions?
Certainly.
Ms. Murray.
Sorry, apologies. Mr. Chair, having conducted my site visit, reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that the staff is in support of, the comments presented and the new submission by the applicant this evening. I'm satisfied that the minor variance application meets all 4 tests of the Planning Act. I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application for variance subject to the following conditions, which is number one, that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated August 13th, 2019, and the elevation drawings plot date July 8th, 2019. And that, number two, that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction, and in cases where a building permit is not required, that the proposed scope of work has not been fully completed.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Your application is approved.
Thank you.
Mr. Karen, if he could email you that drawing?
Mr. Karen, there's been a request that you email the Secretary Treasurer a copy of the revised drawing.
I certainly will.
Thank you. And I assume you're not going anywhere for the next application?
No, I'm here.
CAV A096 at 172 Burgundy Drive. Is there anyone in the audience with an interest in this application that would like to speak to the committee? I see a hand in the back, and there's also a written letter of objection that the committee's received. So, Mr. Karen, if you could take us through a brief presentation.
Certainly. The dwelling being proposed on this site, we are requesting, is requiring three variances. One is for residential floor area. 29% is the maximum allowed, and we are requesting 30.4%. That is made up of approximately 250 square feet of additional floor space occurring on the first and second floor. The second variance has to do with the front yard setback. We are requesting a front yard setback variance to 11 meters. So we're essentially bringing the house forward slightly by approximately 1 meter from where it could go if it was compliant with the bylaw. The letter, I'm just going to speak, I'm going to jump to the letter that was submitted by Miss Ripley on Dunwoody, no, sorry, on Forestwood and behind this property. I did speak with her. I believe she was satisfied after our conversation. Her understanding of the variance that was being requested for the front yard setback, she interpreted it as if the house was going to be forward from the houses on either side substantially, when that is in fact not the case. This site plan demonstrates that. We have a setback on the corner lot to the south of 10.58, so that is actually closer than what we're asking for. And the property to the north is at 11.80, so it is slightly further back, but not by much. So we feel we're about in the middle of these two houses as far as front yard setback goes. The last variance we're asking for is a height variance of 15 centimeters, which is approximately 6 inches. I'll show you the floor plans or the elevations. I'm not familiar with the zooming on this new system. Maybe someone can just zoom me out a little bit. Tap the screen. Okay, good enough. So the front elevation, it's stone and stucco material palette with some wood detail here. The additional height, 15 centimeters, I mean, to put that in perspective, you're looking at approximately this being the height if it were not, if the increase wasn't being requested. We are stepping the house in on the side here. It's got another relief element here for the service entrance. The portico comes out, but otherwise it's a fairly symmetrical design. The rear, this is a covered porch, so that's open for about 14 feet, and then there's various architectural features on the back as well. One thing I do want to just touch on as well for the site plan is the lengths that we have gone through to preserve trees on this site. The house was actually shifted to the north considerably because this is the setback line that we're allowed to build to. As you can see, that's we've gone about another 12 feet over, and that was primarily to preserve this stand of trees that's along here, and some of these trees are quite mature. We are removing a smaller tree here to accommodate the driveway, and then one small tree here to accommodate the footprint of the house. There might be one or two other small trees being removed, but I'd say 90% of the trees are being preserved. The other last thing I want to point out is that this section here on the site plan, that's indicative of the covered porch. So that is an open structure on the main floor at least. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions, Mr. Kieran? No? We just ask you to step aside and we'll invite the member of the audience to come up and speak.
Yeah, sorry, one last thing I'll just mention, that we did canvass the neighborhood and we were able to connect with five of the neighbors, immediate neighbors, and to inform them, so.
Good evening.
Good evening. Can we get your name and address, please?
Yes, name is Scott Maisie, address 171 Forestwood Drive. So we're the property immediately behind the applicant property. So I guess before I make my comments, I just wanted to, I have a, unfortunately, I didn't realize it was a 4:30 cutoff, and I apologize for the late submission. We had been away, and I did receive a visit yesterday and saw the plans and began reviewing them yesterday. Unfortunately, my wife is traveling and it's been in transit all day, so I didn't connect with her until about 4 today. So I wrote that email rather late, and I apologize for that. Also, I did have a question. Should I ask that first? It has to do with the height variance. And my question is simply, with respect to the adjacent homes, is the ultimate height going to be of this structure higher than the two on either side and the one behind my home?
We'll take all your questions and your presentation
All together?
concerns, and then
Okay.
we'll ask Mr. Kieran to come back and address those.
So I'll just basically read what I emailed earlier. We're the owners of 171 Forestwood. We're right behind the property. So with respect to impact, our home has probably the most impact on any changes with this property. We're writing to register objection to the variances submitted and respectfully request that the Committee of Adjustment not approve. In particular, there's 2 out of the 3. So number 1, the increase of floor area ratio by approximately 250 feet above the maximum allowed as per the bylaw. And the number 3, the height variance, which is the maximum allowed per bylaw. We do recommend that item 2 be approved, certainly to move or reduce the minimum frontage. Given that the proposed plan and the new property will set back the home slightly compared to the 2 neighbors, and the fact that there's not a lot of property behind in between the property line and the back of their home, already with the 2-story structure, it's going to be rather imposing. The property does get wider as well, although it's within the bylaws. So our view is that by going above and beyond what's allowed per the bylaw is going to make an already imposing structure bigger and negatively impact our sight lines from behind the property, as the properties on that side on Burgundy are not as deep as the properties on our side. So the backyards are in fact a bit smaller, not as deep. And again, my question is essentially, with respect to the heights of the surrounding homes, would this be the tallest structure among them?
Thank you. So we'll ask Mr. Kieran to respond to that. But sir, before you go, just, if you could help me, maybe help the committee members a little more as to what impact do you believe that the two variances that you're objecting to, the 6 inches of height and the approximately 250 additional square feet, would have on your property?
Well, it has more to do fundamentally with the fact that I'm sure there's been a lot of thought and process and effort in establishing the bylaws themselves, and for reasons that we have maximum limits on all of these. And it is a sizable house without variances already on that property. And because of the depth of the backyard, by going above and beyond the maximums, is going to just make it even bigger. I mean, we're talking 250 square feet. That's two fair-sized rooms, one on each floor. Now, again, with the variance of number 2, that's seems reasonable to me, for sure. With moving it forward, I'm comfortable with that. But that's really where we're coming from, is the idea that I'm sure these bylaws were well thought out and well planned, and a lot of thought and effort went into them. And we'd request that we stay to the maximum limits that have been drawn up.
Okay, thank you. We'll ask Mr.
Thank you.
Kieran to come back and respond.
Unfortunately, I'm not sure if I can give you any concrete information on the height of the surrounding dwellings. Only what I've seen. I know there's 2 newer dwellings on either side of the subject property that are, from what I can tell, at the maximum height, approximately 9 meters. I haven't checked to see if there were variances on those, but they would be very close to the height restriction, or the height limit of 9 meters from what I could tell. I also have been contacted by the person that owns the property directly across the street. Across the street, there seem to be more original dwellings, one story, 1.5 story, a few of them, and the one across the street is a bungalow, I believe. But the owner's intention, he shared with me today, is that, and he's looking at retaining our firm to do so. He's going to redevelop a 2-story dwelling there as well. So the height of some of the existing structures are already 9 meters or close to it. And there's further development going to be occurring in the near future as well. That's about the extent of what I can provide on the height.
Okay, any comments on the other comments that the neighbor made?
Well, I certainly appreciate the concern about the height, but it's when we're talking about a height increase of 15 centimeters, it's barely noticeable. It will provide us with the roof line and the eave height that we had intended for the design of the house. That's why we're requesting it, and to give a little bit more scale to the roof. A slightly higher roof isn't necessarily a bad thing. If you have a roof that's too short, it doesn't look complete. There's not enough mass to it. So we feel that the extra little bit of height actually enhances the appearance. And as I said, I don't think it's really going to be noticeable to the average person walking by, or even somebody living in the area. The square footage, I mean, there are several variances in the area that have been approved for higher RFA variances that are on similar size lots. So what we're asking for is by no means pushing that limit. So the request is quite reasonable in that regard. And planning staff is also supportive of the application. So that is some indication as to the the requests that they're being supported by planning staff.
Thank you. Any members, any follow-up questions? Mr. Flemington?
On your site plan, do you, or can you show us where the existing building is and where the new building is?
Sure.
And the purpose of my question is, the neighbor was commenting on that the home would be set back farther than both of the homes on either side. And I know that you've moved the house forward, so I don't know if it shows clearly enough on that one, but when I look at the drawing, if you could show me where the existing house is.
Sure.
And then I can see the neighbor's house on the right-hand side.
Now, are you wanting to clarify the rear or the front of the building?
Well, I believe the neighbor was at the rear.
Yeah,
So the
correct.
comment was in his email that, given that the proposed home will be set back farther than both of the homes on either side of the subject property.
Okay, got it.
So if you can just
Right.
illustrate to us.
Sure. So, I mean, I think there's two areas we can discuss here. One is the existing dwelling that's there now. That's the lighter hatched area here. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
So that is, in this portion, it's actually a little bit further back than what we're proposing. However, it does jog back here, and then we're coming forward. No, this is a covered porch, so it's open, an open structure. So in relation to that, what's there now, I would say it's about the same, whereas it's a little bit further back in some areas and a little bit further forward or towards the rear in others. As far as how it sits in relation to the neighboring dwellings, so you can see here the setback of this neighbor to the south. It's about 11.59 meters. We're at 10.56, so we are closer by about approximately a meter. Now, the survey does not show the rest of this dwelling, and I do believe some portions of this dwelling do go back further as well, but we don't have that captured on this survey. Same with this house. I'm pretty sure that it does also jog back a little bit, so we don't have the benefit of having that full view, unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you.
If there's no further questions, committee, you've heard the presentation, heard the comments from the neighboring property owner, Mr. Kieran's response. This time, may I have a motion, please? Mr.
May I ask a question of this town staff?
Sure.
Mr. Chair, a question for the town staff. I was wondering if the town staff could just, for the record, explain the situation. It seems like it may be, the elevation may be a technicality.
Yeah.
In that the property slopes down towards the back.
Yeah, through Mr. Chairman, as noted on the site plan, based on the definition and the way that the height is measured in the zoning bylaw, the height physically is 8.52 meters, whereas from the established grade, as the agent was showing on the elevation drawings, is 9.15 to the peak of the roof.
Thank you. And a follow-up, the maximum residential floor area, part of what contributes to that is the rear covered porch, am I correct?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the uncovered porch would contribute to the lot coverage, but it doesn't contribute to the residential floor area as it's not enclosed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Flemington, I believe you had a motion?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having conducted my site visits and having reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that is in support of the application. Also, having taken into account the comments presented this evening by the applicant, as well as the questions and submissions from the neighbors. Noting that there was a written letter in opposition that the person or that the applicant addressed, that seemed to be a bit of a misunderstanding. And then as well as the opposition by the neighbor. So taking all that into account, I would like to move that this application be approved as applied for. I do find that it meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act, that it's minor in nature, and based on the 2 conditions that are in the staff reports, that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings, plot date July 8th, 2019, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? None? All those in favor of the motion to approve? Thank you. That's unanimous. Your application is approved. And maybe just a comment for the neighbor. While the committee has listened to your presentation, and I appreciate the desire to abide by the bylaws, this committee is here for this very purpose, to vary bylaws, not just to abide by them, and it has to consider the evidence and determine whether or not they feel there's an impact. I voted in favor of the application, finding that with the small, minor nature of the variances, plus the fact that the building is moved forward away from your property and generally in line with the properties on either side, I accepted the applicant's evidence on that. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of an explanation as to, where my question was coming from, as to what impacts you felt were there, because this committee is here to do this very thing, vary the bylaw. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now hear CAV A098 2828 Kingsway Drive.
Hello, Bill Bilodeau, 1300 Marlborough Court, Oakville.
Thank you. And, we note that planning staff are not in support of your application, so we'll definitely need a presentation from you, sir.
I didn't know there was going to be, I didn't receive anything saying it was unsupported. All I was doing is there, with the planning staff said it was a daycare, and it's not a daycare at all. It is a learning center where the kids are going in, the Chinese kids are going in and directly learning English before they enter into their schooling. We're looking at kids between 2 and 5 years old to go in. And we were looking at, it's more or less aligned, so they can, instead of them coming from China and directly going into our education system with 0 English. My wife's Chinese, so we see a lot of this. Kids going in directly into our school system, coming from China with no English, very, very little English. So they're having a great deal of problems coming in, going into our education system. So what we are planning is, with my wife, is putting in a school where the kids can go between the ages of 2 and 5 and learn. If you look at the blueprint, the way we have it set up is the rooms are turning into classrooms itself. It's not a place for them to play. It's not going to be a place it's going to be set up like an education system where they go in, they learn English, art, music, and math. And then they then they can have a little bit of playtime, and then they go and learn more education. It's set up literally as a school, not like a Monsignor school. That's the best way to explain it. It's set up like a Monsignor school where they're going there to learn. They're not going there to play every day or all the time. I'm actually having teachers come in that are bilingual, fully bilingual, and teaching these kids so they can go into our education system. The reason how we came up with this is my girlfriend's daughter is currently going to a school in Mississauga, primary school. Well, the principal calls her down out of class so she can speak to the student in Mandarin, because the student doesn't understand when the principal or teacher are talking to them. So that's creating a large problem. So we're trying to figure out a way to solve this problem. And the best way is Learning Center for the parents to drop off their kids and learn, like instead of just a regular daycare where they go and play all day, come in, they actually get to learn English, math, and music and art.
It sounds like a very worthy endeavor, but I think there's two issues the committee's dealing with here. Is one, the application is for a daycare. That's what's been
If you
applied
look on my
for.
application, I specify clearly on my application, Early Learning Center.
Well, what's in front of the committee is to approve for a daycare, and secondly, staff have indicated that you haven't provided sufficient information for them to do a thorough evaluation of the file.
What else did they want? I gave them everything that was asked of me. On your, the forms that you had to fill out, I did everything that was asked of me. All the forms, I filled out all the forms and everything that they asked me to. So if they needed more information, they should have sent me a letter or an email asking me for more information.
Well, as the applicant, sir, you do have a responsibility to make sure that you've provided enough information.
And it was sent to him on Friday.
And the staff reports do get sent out to applicants. But what you're asking the committee to do now is approve a file for a use that you're saying isn't the correct use. I'm not sure whether or not what you're explaining falls under a different definition under the zoning bylaw or not. But
That's
be my advice that you review that with staff. And secondly, the staff do not feel they have enough information. Maybe they've been asking for traffic-related information. You're saying it's, not this. It's not what the application says it is, and maybe that's relevant. Maybe it's not. We don't know. This isn't the kind of thing that can be negotiated with staff here tonight. We asked for people requesting deferrals at the beginning of the meeting. Given what you're saying, I'm going to suggest, and Secretary Treasurer may not like me for doing this, but my advice to you would be that you, at this point, seek a deferral and go back and meet with staff, because I don't see how the committee, the committee will vote the way it does, but I don't see how the committee could tonight approve a use that you're not saying is the use that you're going to, have on the property, and staff saying that they don't have sufficient information. Your other choice is to proceed and see what the committee does with your application.
I talked to the planner, the person that called me. Heather got him to call me, and I told him exactly what I was doing, and he said it's still classified as a daycare. And I said it's not. It's not a direct daycare. To me, a daycare is you drop off your kids and they play all day, or you're babysitting, more or less, babysitting. You're babysitting kids, where they're not there to learn, they're not there to be structured, they're there just to play. Well, he said it's still classified under our laws, it's structured as a daycare. So I said, okay. But I explained to him exactly what we're planning and what we're doing in the phone conversation.
Okay, well, I'll ask whether you'd like to seek a deferral
I
at this
would.
point.
At
There
this
will
point,
be
I
a
would.
deferral fee, or you could proceed.
What is the
but
deferral fee?
$685.
$685.
Wow. Like, I just finished spending over $3,000 just to have this set up.
Yeah, unfortunately, the committee doesn't set the fees, but if you're requesting a deferral, personally, I think that is the right route, and go
Yes.
back and meet with staff and see if you can get that clarified, and even if it is technically a daycare, if you provide additional information, that might change the opinion of staff, but that's not something we can do here tonight. Say the earliest is September 24th, provided you get things worked out in time, but if the committee grants a deferral, again, I suggest you meet with staff. Once you've done that, then you would contact the Secretary Treasurer to confirm a date to come back.
Okay. Through the chair to the Secretary Treasurer, could I ask for a deferral, please? That's that?
You actually have to ask me, and
Okay,
then
through the chair.
I'll ask the committee whether they support that request for a deferral. Members, do you support that request? Okay, so the committee supports that request for a deferral, so your application is deferred. Again, please meet with staff, and once you've done that, contact the Secretary Treasurer for a new date.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear CAVA 099, 129 Watson Avenue.
Hello, everyone. My name's Eric Canton. I'll be presenting for the owners. As 205 17 King Street East, Dundas.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that has an interest in this application? I see a hand in the back of the room, so sir, if you could give us a brief presentation.
Sure. So the variance that's being requested is for lot coverage, and as written in the staff report, while it is greater than the 19%, it does still meet the 4 test because it is in line with the neighboring properties, and the neighboring properties have sort of varying coverages, but the average works out to be about 25.3%. And given that there are no other variances being requested, like setbacks or the GFA, that kind of, you have to look at it as a whole and to appreciate that the built form is not unreasonable.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, any questions? Okay, sir, if we can ask you to take a seat, and we'll ask the member of the audience to come up and speak.
Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Roger Selby, and I live at 117 Watson Avenue, which is approximately three houses south of the property in question. And I'm not here to object to the variance. I realize that having been this route before, that's a bit of a non-starter, but I just wanted to raise a couple of points, and these are specifically within the report from the town on the property itself. One is to do with it said on the second page, the applicants, in addition to the submitted minor variance application, also require site plan approval to deal with technical aspects of the development, such as drainage and grading. These issues were raised during application for 125 Watson Avenue, and drainage is very much our concern, being south of the property, and given the fact that we are relatively close to the lake, we know there are underground streams, and we want to be assured that the drainage at 129 Watson is going to be such that there will be nothing that will impact our particular property. So I don't know how that sort of can be put into any sort of confirmation of this variance application, but if that's possible, I would appreciate it. Also, it states very clearly in the report, the well-established residential area has a sidewalk along both sides of Watson Avenue and large mature trees that provide a significant amount of shade and form a distinct character to the area. that is indeed very true. There is a line of very mature, beautiful cedars on the what I think will be the frontage of this property. And if they can be retained in any way, I think it would be extremely important. They're very healthy. If you look at them right now, they're full of seeds. And they definitely add character to the whole area. In addition to which, retaining the trees of that nature environmentally just makes absolute sense. So again, if that can be included in some way, I would appreciate it. That's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to address what you've said, both the issues are very much items that the site plan committee deals with. And what the staff are requesting tonight as conditions is not that we approve the drawings as submitted to the committee, but that the drawings effectively are approved by the director of planning, so it coincides with the site plan. So if at the site plan level the grading raises issues of drainage, there's a request to retain trees, then these drawings will be, adjusted to reflect that. So what you're seeing here tonight is not, necessarily 100% what's being approved, but it'll be subject to the approval of the director of planning once the site plan goes through as well. So those issues are exactly the things that they address at site plan, and by your presentation here tonight, your comments are on the record.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Sorry, excuse me, gentlemen.
No.
You got to carry on all conversations at the microphone.
Sorry, no, I just asked when he mentioned the cedars, it's sometimes hard to understand which cedars he was, speaking of, so I just wanted to get a better appreciation. So I can answer any questions, but yes, we are going through site plan. As the committee is aware, site plan has in this particular case, has very stringent requirements on stormwater management, grading, engineering, as well as arborist, landscape, and tree canopy calculations. So we're going through that process and we're meeting the town's requirements in that regard.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, may I have a motion, please? Ms. Murray.
Mr. Chair, having conducted my site visit, reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as the town's written staff report, which I note are in support of the comments presented by the applicant this evening, as well as the questions and submissions from the neighbors, and noting that there was one written objection from the neighbor at 152 Watson Avenue. I am satisfied that the minor variance application meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act. I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application for the variance subject to the following conditions. Number 1, that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the final approved site plan to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning Services, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of a decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction, and in cases where a building permit is not required, that the proposed scope of work has not been fully completed.
Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor to approve? That is unanimous. Your application is approved, sir.
Thank you.
We'll now hear CAV A005, 3521, Regional Road 25. Good evening, Mr. Nelson.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. David Nelson, Ruth Victor and Associates, 191 Main Street South, Waterdown, Ontario, representing the applicant.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that has an interest in this application, wish to speak to the committee? Seeing none. Committee members, do you wish a presentation? Do you have any questions for the applicant? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Flemington.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move the motion, having conducted my site visit and reviewing the applicant's written submission. I know this was one that was, I think, previously deferred, so the items that were requested were addressed. And also noting that there was no letters in objection or no one presenting an objection, written or orally. So I find that the application does meet all 4 tests under the Planning Act, and that it be approved with the following conditions: that the boarding kennel be permitted in general in accordance with the submitted revised site plan dated May 2019, that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction, and in cases where a building permit is not required, that the proposed scope of work has not been fully completed, and that prior to the initiation of works, a letter of permission from Conservation Halton be obtained for all development located within the area regulated pursuant to the Ontario Regulation 162/06.
Yeah, so the third condition was not in
Oh, it's not?
the
Oh, sorry.
staff's recommendation.
Okay.
And I believe that falls under applicable law where the
Okay,
applicant
sorry.
would have to
Well,
get
strike that third condition.
anyway. So just the 2
Just
conditions?
the first two that I mentioned.
Okay, just, Mr. Nelson, I'll just give you a chance to, if there's any comment on that.
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Okay, having said that, all those in favor of the motion to approve? That's unanimous, your application is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
We'll now hear our final application for the night, CAVA 086 at 1528 Venetia Drive. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Chairman, committee members and staff. For the record, my name is Peter Vizicus of Empire Design Company from 5 Northridge Crescent, Georgetown, Ontario, representing the owners of 1528 Venetia Drive.
Yes, thank you. I see a group of people in the back of the room. I assume you have an interest in this application. I'm seeing nodding heads. So, sir, if you could make a presentation, please.
Certainly. After your review of the justification report, our proposed site plan and photos, we feel that the increase in height and having 2 separated attached garages closely meet the 4 tests of the official plan guidelines and closely fit within respect to the current zoning bylaw. We feel that these 2 variances are both minor in nature and seeking relief from council in order to proceed for building permit application. The 2 separated garages are encompassed with the styling of this home, and both garages combined are less than the required total garage area permitted. Based on having 2 separated garages, we will require 2 separated driveways, which again, each fit within the regulations of the bylaws and are separated from each other by 15 meters as required by engineering. The distance between our driveway and the adjacent neighbor to the east is approximately 5.5 meters, which is ample separation with clear visibility in order to maneuver 2 vehicles. And this distance is also similar to other properties within the neighborhood. Venetia Drive is flat. There are no hills or major obstructions to impair visibility. There is only a slight bend in the roadway, which will not impact the visibility for access and circulation in any manner to our adjacent neighbor. Based on these facts, we strongly believe that we meet the requirements of the planning policy section 11.1.9.h. Having said that, I'd like to bring to the committee's attention a property that I've identified with a similar driveway configuration around the corner to the west, approximately 100 meters away. There is one home there having 2 separate entrances, in fact, having a circular driveway connecting these 2 entrances with the tree less than 1 meter from the asphalted surface. These existing entrances have a separation between them of less than 15 meters, which does not comply with the town standards. I have photos here to submit as part of my submission, if I may.
Could you explain to committee what, if anything, has changed since the last time you were here?
We've actually moved the building closer to the rear and gained a larger front yard setback in order to, well, to put it in a nutshell, we have a 3-meter setback from the edge of the trunk of the tree to the edge of the asphalted area, plus another 3 meters to the face of the building, which is the porch. And then the porch projects out by 1.5, so we're even further back from that. So basically, we moved the building further towards the rear to accommodate a longer driveway, the access to connect the two, a larger front yard setback. We've maintained the walkway at 1.8 meters maximum. Our height is apparently an issue because of the grading conditions. We are very low at the rear yard, and take into account the front and rear points, we become 0.3 meters greater than the required.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, any questions for the applicant? Okay, not seeing any at this time, so we'll ask you to take a seat, sir, and we'll invite the members of the audience who wish to speak to come up now.
Hi, my name is Carol Udy. I live at 1537 Venetia Drive, across the street in Over One from the proposed building. My concern is the 2 garages and the 2 driveways. It doesn't fit with anything in the neighborhood. It's going to make it look like a semi-detached home, and it's also going to be dangerous because just after that house, there's a big bend in the road, and I've lived there for 25 years, and a number of times people have gone out of control going around that bend, and when you add another driveway to the mix, it's going to make it worse. It's not all clear and visible. There are tree branches that block the way, and my concern has always been that some child will get hit when a car goes around that bend. I just don't think it will fit in with the neighborhood at all. And my concerns are that I know that the owner owns many rental properties, and is the reason that they want 2 garages and 2 driveways because they want to put 2 Airbnbs in there or 2 rental units? Because I don't think she lives in any of her properties. And the people that rented the house prior to them did use the house as an Airbnb. And we don't like people coming and going all the time, and all the issues going on now with Airbnbs and people getting murdered and all that make us more scared. So we just have concerns.
Okay, thank you. We'll ask the applicant to address your concerns. Did anyone else in the back wish to address the committee? Yes? Yes, if you'd like to address the committee, please come forward.
My name is Pamela Fenner, Fenner. I live at 1536 Venetia Drive.
1536.
I have a couple of concerns. First of all, the one driveway on each side. It's very easy to say that you can get out from our driveways as it is. It's not. Going around the Walby corner, you're going out blindly. If I end up having more cars in that driveway to the left of me, it is going to get more dangerous. As dangerous as it is now. And if they have, I mean, it's one thing we live on that street. It's another thing if people happen to be visiting, they are not going to understand how to get out of there. My other concern is it's gonna be a semi-detached. I don't understand why you need two driveways in two different locations of a house. I just don't get it. Like, I can see if you're going to have a double driveway, that's fine, but two like that, it looks like a rental, and it does not fit into that neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. We'll
Okay.
ask the applicant to address your
Thank you.
concerns. Just one last time, if anyone else would like to address the committee? Seeing no one. So generally speaking, the concerns the committee heard were, why do you need two separate driveways, two separate garages? Is this going to be a semi and is going to cause safety concerns with two driveways?
Yes, I'd like to address those comments. They seem to be similar. Like I said before, the styling of this home with the dropped gables delineate the two separated driveways. This house is not going to be a semi-detached. It's not going to be an Airbnb. It's going to be a single-family home. And the main feature of the home is the front entry porch, which is a single door. This house was actually constructed in Oakville quite some time ago for the Princess Margaret show home. At that point, it had two garages on the one side, a double garage. It's exactly the same house, except we've reconfigured the design of it and the interior to accommodate two separated garages. It's an identical home. If I can get this site plan up on the screen to show you the way the property works. Okay. So basically, this is the proposed site plan we've submitted. We have basically 3 meters separation from the trunk of the tree, 3 meters to the porch, and then another further setback of 1.8 to the building is how the configuration is going to be. This actual footprint that you see here is the existing house itself. Ours is a very faint dotted line, more rectangular than anything else. The driveways have a long length of distance with the separation, the connection between. Here's the existing driveway to the east, which is probably more than 5.5 meter separation. This is an example of a vehicle coming from this end. This is an example of a vehicle coming from this end. There's only a slight bend in the roadway here. As you're coming this way, it's easily visible to see any vehicle coming out of this driveway or the next. Same thing with the other side. The branches of these trees, although they encompass a large umbrella, have been pruned well enough where you can visibly see while sitting in a car underneath the branches. They're not overhanging onto the roadway or into the ditch. This property is well maintained and well taken care of. It's a very classy neighborhood, and we intend to maintain the same class in this neighborhood. Chairman, committee members, based on all the factual information provided and conversations with the planning department, we feel that our variances meet the 4 tests and are minor in nature. We'd like to request permission for acceptance and grant permission to proceed for a building permit. If there's any further questions, I'll be glad to ask any.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, may I have a motion, please? Mr. Fleming, then.
Mr. Chair, having conducted my site visit and having reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as the town staff report, which I note that it is in support of, also noting that there was an opposition letter that was submitted and an oral presentation by some of the neighbors in opposition. Some of the comments that were in opposition were related to use, whether it's semi-detached. We heard that it wasn't going to be, it's not going to be for a bed and breakfast. I mean, these things obviously aren't, taking into account, what we typically would look at. We have been told that it's going to be used as a single-family dwelling. There are two entries off that street currently for the house that remains, that is existing. That being said, noting the application has two variances, I find that they are minor in nature and that they do meet the intent of the Planning Act. And thank the applicant for deferring and addressing a couple of the issues from before. I do note that there are some conditions that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted revised site plan dated July 17th, 2019, and revised elevation drawings dated June 20th, 2019, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve? It is unanimous, your application is approved, sir.
Be on your cheat sheet, no?
Yes. Committee, we have minutes of July 23rd. Mr. Flemington moves the minutes. Those are approved. Motion to adjourn. Mr. Flemington, once again, we are adjourned.